Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, John Corcoran here, the co-host of this show where we feature top entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their story. We've got a great guest here today. His name is Mike Simonsen. I'll explain in a moment who he is, former president of the EO San Francisco chapter, very well beloved within the chapter. And he's got a lot of involvement with EO for many, many years. So we'll talk about that. And of course, this episode is brought to you by EO San Francisco. The EO Entrepreneurs Organization is a global peer-to-peer network of more than 16,000 influential business owners in some 200 chapters, 60 plus countries. If you are a founder, co-founder, owner, or controlling shareholder of a company that generates over 7 figures a year in revenues, and you want to connect with other like-minded successful entrepreneurs, well, EO is for you. And the EO San Francisco chapter enables leading entrepreneurs in the Bay Area to learn, grow, and achieve greater success. You can learn more by going to eonetwork.org/San Francisco. All right, Mike, it's a pleasure to talk to you here today. Now, you are the CEO and founder of Altos Research, which provides analysis which analyzes real estate markets in real time. And your customers include really anyone with exposure in U.S. residential real estate. So that's brokers and agents and financial institutions, investors, builders. And you also were the president of the EO San Francisco chapter and a longtime member and host of the Top of Mind podcast, of course, as well. And you were actually the president of the chapter going into the pandemic, right? Weren't you 2019 to 2020?
Yeah, it turned out actually in retrospect to be a real privilege to be in that role at that time. Because it was, the world was turned on its head, and our organization, we needed to come together in big ways, and we did. And so it was a remarkable time to be in that leadership role, in a once in a lifetime event, hopefully once in a lifetime event. And so, I was, and that was it. It derailed some of my priorities as president. Some of the things I wanted to get done, all of a sudden it got thrown out the window. But we were able to pull together and help some people who had amazing businesses that shut down overnight. And it was quite a time.
What was that like for you as you're, if we're in March of 2020, as you see this, your friends, your peers, you've been involved in EO for many years, you deeply ingrained in the chapter, you've got lots of great friends. What was it like for you as you were talking to your friends whose businesses were just, I know you and I both know people whose companies went down to literally nothing in the course of weeks.
Yeah, in weeks. And what was fascinating is, so you could kind of see it coming starting in even December, we could start hearing the smart people around me start talking about it. And I had done like an EO trips in January and February. Like I did a president's meeting and like we knew it was sort of around, and but we didn't realize what was coming exactly. But then we could see, starting in January, February, really, the businesses that had tourism related revenues, they plummeted very quickly.
Very quickly, yeah.
And that was before any lockdowns happened. It was like, this was like the world is stopping because we can see what's happening.
Yeah.
And so that was like, that's like scary. That's like, what do we do for those people? And then what's that going to have? What second order effects was that going to have for everybody else?
Yeah.
And we could see it before the, lockdowns.
And what were some things that, what sorts of meetings were you involved in then? What sorts of decisions were made? What did you do as a board, as a president, as a chapter?
Yeah, there were, we had some companies that went from, like $10 million, $15 million companies to zero overnight. And so some of those companies, and the people, colleagues, friends, we did, like, we rallied together and did some like specific tactical work, and like, how do we get expertise to a person who needs it right now? And, expertise was like, man, I went from, selling thousands of dollars a day, tens of thousands of dollars a day, to now I'm getting dinged on credit cards, wanting refunds at the rate of thousands of dollars a day.
Yeah.
What do I tell people? How do I word that email? How do, all of those things? And so, like, there's that kind of thing that was really, it was amazing to be able to marshal the resources of the chapter and of the, the whole organization together to help some of those folks that were in the most dire need in that moment. And then, of course, the big thing at that time was when the stimulus stuff started happening. PPP was started to happen. It was chaos. Nobody knew how to get it. Nobody, like, I've had my company for 17 years, and I bank at B of A, and nobody at B of A knew nobody knew anything.
Yeah.
But eventually some people with good banking relationships started to know, and we were able to get things together. And I remember at that time, in my company, we had customers canceling and saying, hey, we've got to drop, what you're billing us, and we've got to cut it. So we cut our salaries across the board by, I think it was 25 or 50%, just like we have no idea what's coming and we need to preserve the cash. And so we did that. When we did that before there was even any inkling of PPP, we just had to do it. And so we knew we were in that survival mode. And so, like, then when those things, those resources started happening, it was infinitely valuable to so many of us.
Yeah.
I remember other things too. Like, I watched a colleague run a webinar for his customers. And the webinar was like, what do we do when the market's in fear? And I thought, well, my customers need that. And so I did a webinar for my customers, and here's what we're seeing in the market, and here's what we can expect. And I was blown away by how many of my customers wanted to see, like, they cared. And that my idea to do that was like watching another EO member do it. I thought, like, just by having the group was really, like, all kinds of powerful things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've said before that I think that the way that EO responded to that pandemic is a case study in how organizations should respond, because within a couple of days, I had, a text message a day or a couple a day that had a list of these different calls that were happening throughout the day, just people hopping on Zoom calls.
Yep.
Working through things together, and then an email and all this stuff, like almost like there was a plan in place, which I'm sure there wasn't. But they rallied it together. It was really incredible how much education happened within days.
And I was, as president, then I have this cohort of the presidents of the other chapters, and I'm watching the smart things that they're doing with their chapters. And, one of them holds a town hall meeting and they get everybody in the same room, and one of them's, recording videos. And I did a talk with Finn Kelly, who was the president of Colorado at the time, on some of the crisis management things that personal management things that we know how to do. And so there was a lot of those resources to just, it was just amazing time to be in the organization. And like I said, to be a leader, like, what a privilege to be a leader at that moment.
Now, at the same time, you have a company that serves the U.S. residential real estate market. And if I remember correctly, early on, people were saying, oh, this is going to kill this hot housing market that we've had. That's what everyone thought. It ended up being the opposite. But certainly your stomach must have been dropping, thinking like, oh, crap, what's going to happen to my company? So talk me through what the experience was like for you as you balanced your dual roles of being president of the chapter and also having to keep your business afloat.
Yeah, well, we assumed that the market would like have to freeze and tank um, there were varying degrees of prognosticators of people thinking it's another repeat of 2008, and some that were, I was a little less fearful than some of those, because the data that I knew. But what I did, it was funny. What I did at that time was so I did this webinar, and everybody cared. All my customers came on, and what I said was like, look, if the market's going to tank, what Altos research does uniquely strong in the world is that we track the entire U.S. market every week, and we publish those numbers every week, and we can tell us exactly what's going on. And what was amazing was that we had literally 3 weeks of down market price adjustment, 3 weeks before people started buying houses again.
Wow.
And
not very long at all.
Unbelievable. Like, it was all of a sudden, by the 4th week, I look and I'm like, guys, market's up this week. and
you're like not believing it
That was
yourself.
going to happen.
You're like, is there something wrong with this software we're selling?
Yes, exactly. You start second guessing yourself, but like, I think it's up, and then the next week it's up again. And I'm like, okay. And I started doing videos every week, publishing these out and sharing these videos. So now I've been doing those for more than 2 years straight, every week, and just every week and because every week is a new story now. And it's, the first thing that happened was, normally in April, May, June, the available inventory of homes for sale climbs because, it's the spring selling season, new listings come to market. But what was happening in 2020 was, we had those 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden inventory declined, people bought stuff, inventory declined, people bought, and then all of a sudden we're at record few homes, and it's still falling every week, and prices are climbing. And it was just like, who knows where this is going to stop? Who knows what's going on? But by then, as the market, we grew used to seeing the data that way. And it was really fascinating because traditional real estate data uses the houses that sold last month or the month before, and they publish. That's what you typically hear with the headlines is, it's April now, or it's May now, and it's like, oh, March or April numbers were here, they were up big. But of course, the market right now is what matters. And so there were the traditional folks in the housing data that were still, by like August of 2020, we're still predicting a big tank, the market cratering. And we were looking around going, the market's on fire. And it's fun to be able to be contrarian and bullish at the same time. Like, that's the best position to be in.
As you look back on it, over the last 2 years, maybe that's it. But what is the thing that's most shocking for you, just having followed this out? I mean, I can't imagine that it played out the way that you thought it would at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I mean, it never occurred to me that we would have had the strongest housing market ever as a result of the pandemic. The phenomenon of remote work we called it Zoom towns, people moving to the Zoom towns. And, in San Francisco, it moved up to Truckee, or, they moved to Bend, Oregon, or, Boise, Idaho, that kind of thing. And that phenomenon hit so strong. And in retrospect, it was, had I been really sensitive to it, like I had a friend, we were skiing that week of the March 15th when the lockdown happened. And I had a friend who was in an Airbnb, and he never left. Like, he never went back to his San Francisco apartment.
Wow.
And so had I been really, sensitive at that moment, I would have said, that's a trend, in whatever, the first week of April. But it took me longer to catch on to really what was happening there. That trend, that remote work trend, continues now. It's not decreasing. It's still growing. And it is a
Yeah, I spoke to a neighbor across the street just about this. Just you have these conversations all the time. He said, "Yo, yeah, I used to work in the city, and now they want us to come in 2 days a week, and I don't really want to." I mean,
Yeah.
I've had so many conversations with people like that.
Tons, right? And so that phenomenon is not changing, right? And so, but that's something that is, it is uniquely like that's the moment in time we're going to look back in history and go, oh, remember that before that time we were in the office 5 days a week, and my daughter is never going to know that.
Mm. Such a lasting, just a sea change that doesn't just affect the way that we work, but the way that we live. Because people are going to be able to live wherever they want to, or a large number of them are going to be able to live wherever they
Yeah,
want
a
to.
large number, that are fully remote, a large that are hybrid, like your friend. But the nice thing about your friend there is, so it's a couple days a week, and what happens migration wise is that now the commute window, an hour commute window. If you're doing a commute every day and it's an hour, that is a killer,
It's
right?
a
An
lot.
hour is deadly. Um, but if you're only doing it for 2 days and maybe you're staying overnight that night, you can all of a sudden go 2.5 hours. Like you zip in on Tuesday morning, you go Tuesday over Tuesday night, Wednesday, and you're home late Wednesday night. So your radius grows much bigger outside of a city. So that's an interesting trend. When the bubble burst, in 08, 09, 2010, the radius shrank. Like the further out you were from the core, the harder that cratered. Like the things further out, cratered
Mhm.
harder. But like that's flipped now, and so that's a totally new phenomenon that I never saw coming, but sure looks like it's here forever.
Yeah, I mean, and if in March of 2020 you'd said, "Hey guys, here's what I think is going to happen," people probably would have said you're crazy because
You're crazy. People are,
yeah,
nobody's gonna have any money at all, right? People were,
yeah,
like all of that kind of thing is
yeah.
for sure.
Let's talk about EO San Francisco again. Now, you served as chapter president, and then after that, you continued on what's called the leadership or path of leadership, and
Yeah.
you've served on the global forum committee. So, first, tell us what that is and what that role entails.
Yeah, I have a particular passion for forum, and in EO, like the secret sauce of EO is how we are trained in forum, how we conduct ourselves in forum, that highly structured meeting, and how we communicate with one another in forum. And over the years, I've been in not high performing forum experience, and I've been in high performing forums. And let me tell you, when it's high performing, it's life changing. And I wanted to bring high performance forums to everyone in EO. And so I was a forum chair in San Francisco for a few years. Then I was president elect, and then I was president. And when I was president, I was like, I still wanted to continue that. Like, how do we really deliver high performance forums to everyone in San Francisco? And it really, when the forums are performing well, the chapter's performing well, we have our highest retention rates ever because nobody wants to leave their high performing forum because it's so great. So we had all those things, and so then once you're president of the chapter, you kind of got to move out of the way for the other leaders to be able to do their leadership. But we have regional, the U.S. West region, and there is forum leadership there where I did a couple of years of helping each of the chapters forum chairs lead and get their forums to high performance. And then there's the global forum committee, which is, there's 10 of us from around the world who have a passion for forum. And we are really about leading the forum content and structure and resources and things for all of the global members, the 16,000 members in EO. And it's, doing the best new techniques and training, and it's content, and it's resolving conflict, and all of the things that we can teach people to have high performance forums. And so because it feels really impactful to me, I chose to do that first at the regional level and now at the global level.
It's a big shift to go from serving your local chapter, everyone who lives within whatever 100-mile radius, many of them already, to serving on a global committee. What has that experience been like for you, shifting and now working with people, entrepreneurs all over the globe?
Well, one of my favorite things about EO is the deep connection with amazing people all over the globe. And you do an EO meeting, and it's like, you're rad. Tell me about your business, right? Like I geek out on that stuff. I love it. And so I love that about being at the global committee, right? There's people from all over the world, and they're all really passionate about forum and skillful in forum. And so I love that. It is, we're at the leadership level in EO that really help guiding EO to the next generation of growth, and go from 16,000 members to many, many more than that. And what does that mean? And how do we best deliver that? And how do you deliver forum in a world where not everybody lives in the same city anymore?
Yeah.
Like there's interesting questions like right now that we need to help solve for people. How do we solve values conflicts over things like there could be things like COVID, intense values conflicts about how we handle the pandemic. And so like helping people, members navigate those kinds of things is real rewarding for me.
Yeah. And it's changed too. In my forum, we've had conversations around, what do we want to do now? Because what people wanted to do a year ago is different from what people want to do now in terms of, do we do a Zoom meeting in this context? If someone has to miss, can they Zoom into it? Do we do a hybrid where we have some people who are maybe they're at risk, or maybe they were possibly exposed? All these things kind of have to be navigated as you go along.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And, it's a highly dynamic world, so the things that make a forum high performance, there are some common things. There's some universal things about it.
Let's talk about that, actually. Tell me about that. Yeah.
So high performance forums have, there's sort of a number of rules. We have the forum mindset, which is where active listening. We are not giving advice. We're sharing experience. We are like, there's a structure to that. The high performance forums have taught themselves to follow that, even when they're tempted not to. They follow that forum mindset, because when you deviate, you end up with, like you end up with lower performance, right? You think like, I think I can rewrite the rules here, but actually, like the rules, we do the rules for a reason. It's like it's like doing art. You learn the technique, then you can compose the song, then you can really truly express yourself. If you try to go right to expression first,
sounds horrible.
It sounds horrible, right?
It's exactly.
And so those kinds of technique level things that we teach, and it's things like structuring the meeting and how we do our reflections, on monthly reflections, and the ability of a forum to add new members. So there are some forums who have like, oh, we've been the same 6 dudes for 15 years and we don't want anybody else, but that's brittle, and and the strength is in the dynamism and the new experience that you can add. And so there's characteristics like that we try to capture over time to really teach people what are the characteristics of a high performance forum.
And then one of the tensions also is adding new people to a forum. I understand there's been some shifts in thinking about this over the years. There's different ways of doing it. There's kind of a dating situation where forums kind of figure out if it's a good fit or not. Then there's just, I forget what it's called, but there's a euphemism for it, but it's basically just like, here, take this new person, whether you like it or not.
There's what we call collaborative placement.
Placement.
Yeah. It's like a new member joins EO, and they are qualified for EO. And if they're qualified for EO, they are qualified for any forum in EO. And so, there are some things that we have to make sure that a person doesn't, matches for a forum. For example, if there's business or conflict, or the person outside of EO, there are those kinds of things that are important. There are sometimes geographic things like, well, we meet, virtual all the time, or we never meet virtual. We're always there's a couple of things, structure things that are wise to make sure are working before a placement. But with collaborative placement, it's like, take those into account. We know that what those things are. And then if a person is qualified for EO, they're placed in the forum. What happens is the old school way of dating, meaning like, oh, you're a new member. Well, let me interview you and see if I want you in my forum. And then they say, well, let me see if I want to be in your forum. That seems tempting on the surface with a new member. The problem is you can't really tell if a person is going to be skillful in the forum mindset with an interview.
Like a first date.
With a first date. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so therefore, what we tend to do is we tend to pick people to look exactly like us. And therefore, we lose the power of the diversity of thinking views that EO brings us. And so, and we also get, can you imagine being that new member who is like, oh yeah, you're not a good fit for us. Oh, you're not a good fit for us. Now I got to see, I interviewed with your forum and now I got to see you at events and stuff. And I wasn't good enough for you.
Yeah.
Like
what a bad way to enter an organization. You immediately feel like I'm not wanted here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the worst. So we use collaborative placement and it's one of the things that we teach about high performance forums, right? It's like, and high performance chapters. If you are, like we have a process for admitting new members, so figuring out if they're qualified, figuring out if they are willing to be vulnerable and share and trusting, and know that they're not here to like pitch their business for other people, and so if that person qualifies, they've gone through our qualification process, then they are qualified for any forum in the chapter. And that's really what collaborative placement is. And it's really, when we shift to that, the payoffs are significant across the organization. But if you're an old forum and you've never had that before, now it can feel like, oh, you're trying to shove somebody down my throat.
Yeah.
That change is hard.
What I love about this is that there's so many lessons that are applicable to our business and to entrepreneurship. And so like, for example, like one of the lessons around forum is that you should own your experience. You should speak straight. If you don't like something, some way it's handled, you should speak up and say it to other people. And there may be an alternative. You could try something else. There's bridge forums, which are people that meet at different intervals, and it might be with other chapters instead of people in their chapter. All those, I think all of those things are good lessons in life, and as a founder, as an entrepreneur, to speak up for yourself, to own your experience, to change things if they're not the way that you want them to be.
Yeah, I mean, for me, everything I do in EO is like applicable personal development. And the whole thing is a learning organization, and it's a personal development process for me. So, being a member in a forum, I sit there and I learn from all these other rock stars around me, and I go, I want to steal that, and then being a leader, you then steal those, that like you watch those other amazing leaders around you, and so like that's exactly how it plays out for me, and EO has never been about like, here's some more revenue for me, but it is about like my life and business are entirely unrecognizable from what they would be before.
Yeah. And we're running a little short on time, but before we end, I want to ask about, you developed a talk called Hacking Happiness, which you developed through EO and that you give to different chapters, which is really about, well, I'll let you use it in your words, but it's really about generating more happiness and then the impact that had in your business. So can you share that concept?
Yeah. Hacking Happiness is the essence of hacking happiness is that the emotions of happiness and the related emotions, the positive emotions, they're really expressions of neurotransmitters, chemical signals in our body. And the essence of hacking happiness is that we have control over those neurotransmitters. When we do, we increase serotonin. We feel more joy and purposefulness. We are also smarter, and we answer questions faster on the phone. And so but the essence is that we have control over those chemicals. Therefore, our emotions result, the positive emotions result, which results in all kinds of magic in our world. And it's magic that, for me, doubled the size of my business. And, it is, and I like to think that in EO, when I was the president, it allowed us to have, because I practiced these hacking happiness hacks, it allowed us, for example, to have the highest retention we'd ever had in the chapter. And it's because we're giving serotonin to as many people as we can, and getting that positive reinforcement experience. And that's what the talk is about. It's really about how we do that, the techniques, but also the science behind it, why that works, why, we're told all these things, do this, have gratitude, do these things. But for me, it's, why do we do those things? We do those things because I can adjust my neurotransmitters with that, and I can create the emotion as a result.
Mike, such a pleasure talking to you. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and learn more about what you do?
Well, altosresearch.com is the company website. You can find me on Twitter, Mike Simonsen on Twitter. I talk a lot about housing data, if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, or our YouTube channel. I have a personal YouTube channel where I post some of the hacking happiness videos and things. If I do a talk for a chapter and I record it, I'll share it there. So you can find me on YouTube as well.
Excellent. Mike, thanks so much.
All right, John.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.